And I'm delighted to join all the other speakers in congratulating Nicholas and Timon and all of the other organizers of this fantastic event for steeping us in 400 years of UK-Japan history. My role is to bring us right up to date to the present, and indeed to look a bit into the future, and slightly to lower the tone by talking about rather nasty military matters. But I want to take you back less than 400 years to the beginning of our seminar, when Ambassador Hayashi's opening remarks, in which he said, I think rightly and kind of self-deprecatingly as a diplomat, that it has been routine to say that UK-Japan relations are better than ever. But the question has always been, how meaningful is that observation? But what is clear is that in one area, in the last 5 years, but arguably actually the last 10 years, suddenly UK-Japan relations have become quite meaningful because tangible, and that area is maritime and defense and security collaboration. It is an alphabet soup of acronyms. The RAA, the Reciprocal Access Agreement that has been signed to let our troops operate in each other's countries' bases. The JCAP, the Joint Combat Air Project, building fighter planes in a three-way collaboration with Italy as well. AUKUS should be seen as part of it, the Australia, UK, US collaboration for nuclear submarines, but also technology operations, for the clear reason that an important part of this AUKUS deal is that there will be set up something called Submarine Rotation Force West, operating out of a port in southwest Australia, in Western Australia, near Perth, that will send British and American nuclear-propelled submarines patrolling the Western Pacific, beginning from 2027, and therefore forming part of Japanese defense operations, and all of the military exercises and work towards interoperability that have happened. So how should we look at this collaboration? It is tempting to place it in history and think about the Anglo-Japanese alliance from 1902 and see this as a return to this. I would very much count myself as an adherent to the Warren philosophy, that one has to see history as it is changing and as it is in the present day. The time then was very different, the time today is very different, and what the two countries offer to each other in this difficult geopolitical moment is also different. Yes, we are perhaps William Adams plus, for as well as building things together, we can also sail our ships, our carrier strike group, out to Japan and bring in troops for joint exercises. But actually, what we need to do to understand what this amounts to and where it's going is to look at principally Japan's own defense and security predicament and the global issue that Britain shares of how to respond to the rise of China and China's efforts to control the oceans around it, the strategic space around it, which has been described as an effort to produce in the South China Sea what could be called as Lake Beijing, a Chinese lake. For Japan, suffers from what actually Taniguchi Tomohiko, who was here a few weeks ago speaking, Prime Minister Abe's former speechwriter, describes, in contrast to Australia's tyranny of distance, can be described as the tyranny of proximity. Proximity to China, to North Korea, to Russia. Also, a proximity in which Japan operates in what can be described as also a sort of double-edged sense of dependency on the United States as its principal security partner. a dependency that leads to concerns about the equal and opposite fears of entrapment in an obligation to support America in an enterprise that Japan might not agree with. On the other side, abandonment, being suddenly dropped by the United States, as indeed was felt in 1972 when Henry Kissinger suddenly popped up with Richard Nixon in Beijing. But Japan also sees, in the light of that double-edged dependency, a growing need for itself to contribute to its own defense and to build its own resilience. I think we should see this as a process that has been developing over some long period. Today, for me, has been a kind of history day. This wonderful conference this afternoon, 400 years of UK-Japan history, and earlier today at lunchtime, a book launch at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, which was looking at almost 65 years of relationships between the IISS and Japan, including secondments of 29 Japanese diplomats to periods at the IISS, and all of the writings that had been contributed for the IISS by Japanese strategic thinkers and diplomats. And in that history, what I think was quite notable were two particular contributions to me. One by a great academic strategic thinker from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, Professor Kosaka Masataka, where he definitely advised that Japan needed to evolve its foreign policy from being what he called an island nation to become a maritime nation. This is open towards closed towards open, outward looking, and as part of that maritime evolution, I think Japan's diplomacy has become, in the defense and security field, much more outward looking, seeking to find friends around the world, and particularly around Southeast Asia, in the, if you like, the periphery of its great fear, China. And the second contribution was from Yoichi Funabashi, who many of us will know, former editor-in-chief of the Asahi Shimbun, but also founder of the Asia-Pacific Initiative think tank in Tokyo, who gave a lecture for the IISS about 5 years ago, in which his theme was essentially, we are all small countries now. And in the light of great power competition, but also the increased economic and geopolitical complexity of this globalized system that we are all in, we are small countries, and therefore we need each other more than we did before. And that, I would suggest, is the context in which these pieces of defense collaboration, both institutionalized between governments, but especially now also involving companies, needs to be seen. We are all small countries now. We are seeking to exert some agency, some influence, and to do that, we need each other. Will this last? Will we still be thinking about this in 5, 10, 15 years' time? I would suggest we will, because this, in Britain at least, this seems to have bipartisan support. This is something that is not the whim of a particular government, but rather a long-term phenomenon, as it is very much a structural phenomenon in Japanese thinking. It may certainly depend on developments, shall we say, in the United States, and in particular in next November's presidential election. But whatever happens there, Japan's need for allies and influence through partners is structural and built on the tyranny of proximity. And as a result, I would suggest that 400 years after William Adams, maritime collaboration between our countries, between the bigger navy of Japan and the great naval capabilities and strategic issues that we have, is going to flourish in the future and be very important for the next few decades. Thank you very much.